Our speaker today is Hal Ottaway, and he's will be here to showing us and telling us about some of his favorite Votes for Women postcards in his collection. Welcome and greetings to everybody here on Flag Day. And along that same vein, I chose this postcard issued by the Kansas Good Government Association. And it's a Kansas Suffrage postcard and thought it would make a good title card for this presentation. Let me just get started briefly that the golden era of suffrage postcards was from about 1905 to 1915. During that time, there was a national headquarters, and the group was called the National American Woman Suffrage Association. They had their headquarters on Fifth Street in New York City. There's even postcards showing their headquarters. It must be another really scarce and hard to find New York City view card that I'm not aware of. But this was the home base, so to speak, for all of the states to get together and to really work toward passing this legislation that needed to be passed state by state in order to get this constitutional amendment granting women the rights to vote. And so there was the national headquarters, and they had a gift shop or whatever you want to, however you want to refer to it, but they had buttons, they had postcards for sale, they had pennants, there were posters, there were lots of things that were issued to help women, really publicize and to have something maybe snappy to wear or to show in a parade back in their town. So when people would go to New York, they would go to those headquarters and buy things or order them from a catalog. There was even a catalog too that helped them spread the word about this. Then there were state organizations also, and that's where we're going to get started here. This is a card that would have been there in Indiana. And I think that some of these state cards are harder to find. Maybe they didn't have the distribution all over the country like they would have just in that state. But you know how it is when, and you know what we're talking about a lot of times. If there was a card like this, that might have been addressed to the lady of the house or maybe the man of the house since he could vote and the woman couldn't. But just getting the word out and spread. This was I don't want to say costume, but this was something that some of the ladies wore. Look at that very, very narrow little waist on this lady, but a beautiful garment, and whether that's a dress and a coat over it, I'm not quite sure. Big hat, big banner. As a collector, we would all love to have all of that. And some of our friends do have a great Votes for Women collection. This just shows how one of those cards was used in correspondence back and forth. I'm not sure which state it was from. This is the Oklahoma card. And the Oklahoma, I'm going to be talking about different ones today, or as I talk about them, and I will indicate the ones that have been especially tough for me to find. I can't remember really when I last saw one of these for sale. It's just a terrific card. It was printed on a paper that's you can see around the edges. It looks like the surface of it. Thank goodness it didn't get into the text because the text is the goody part. But It's just a paper that kind of sloughed off around the edges. But that was the nature of the beast, and we're lucky to have it like this. But again, her wonderful yellow gown and hat, and this is a tough card. Here's one from South Dakota, used in 1910. Again, this same lady. And wow, I love this Ohio Woman Vote card. That card, I believe, appears on a poster as well as probably a pinback button or two. I'm not sure if the buttons are round or if they're rectangular, but the artwork, I've never seen any information about who the artist was, but they really knew their stuff, and this just grabs you as far as wonderful graphics and so forth. A great card. By the way, that card was reproduced. I bought it off of a rack at a museum one time, and so don't be satisfied with the first one you look at until you look at the back and make sure it's one of the old ones and not a reprint that's been made just for to get more punch out of it. Here we are, another one of that state series for California, and again the lady with her banner. Here's another California card, and I kind of get a kick out of this because here on the right corner you see a multi-storied building from the Barker brothers in Los Angeles, a big department store, and they must have had a lot of lady customers and knew that it would be good business to support their uh, the right to vote. So I don't know anything more about the family and so forth, but I'm sure there's more to that story. But an unusual and a very fine state card for sure. Here's one that kind of shows what they were up against. The Western states were the first ones to say yes, and they would support the amendment to the Constitution. And so that was the job that they had to do, was to get all of these other states, or at least a total of three-fourths of them, I think, to say yes and go ahead and get it to be an amendment. Here's the New York one. And I think Tom Peeling, I talked to him and he said that he thought that this was, or he knows of it as being a button. And why not? You know, that kind of a design and everything. It's circular. It's just ideal. I've never seen one, but I'm going to be looking for it just to say it. It came out of their headquarters in Delphi, New York in 1915. Great graphics and image and everything. Here's a Kansas card they used in 1911. This card was made for Kansas Day, but they must have had there in Topeka a little stack of these, and somebody at their headquarters had a rubber stamp that said votes for women, and you can see it along the right side, kind of the top half of the right side. You see the word women, and you look closer and it says votes for. It's not a it's one that was used at the time, and it just shows how they did. You know, they didn't have a card of their own to use, so they used this state card and stamped up a few. So that's a handsome card. The artist was C.A. Seward, who was a prominent printmaker and worked at the Western Lithography here in Wichita. This is what they came up with the next year in 1912. The official postcard from the Topeka Good Government Club, and their name and everything was is on the other side. But a wonderful poster type, patriotic, well, you know, bound. It's just a great card, and I can't remember when I last saw one for sale. I remember one year Chicken Seal Harris, who several of you will know their name, but They came to our Wichita show and they spotted one of these and were able to buy it there. So they got theirs here at the Wichita show a long time ago. This is a great card from New York State, and the stars in the sky represent the first six states that ratified for the amendment. And this says in 1911 this was issued out of New York. This is a, I wanted to show some of the artists that I know of, and this is a wonderful one. The artist being Emily Hall Chamberlain, three words. And this came out in 1915. It's one of the official cards, and I say that in that it would have been for sale almost for sure at the national headquarters and then maybe in state headquarters too. And their big thing was they would talk about being an official card where most of the money that was paid for it would go to the national headquarters. But it's a great card. And let me show you another one from this series. Here's another, just cute kids, and their clothing, everything, the text, the design, everything is just first class. Plus the paper itself, it just has a nice, it's heavy, and it just has a nice feel, and we're lucky to have this great little set of cards. And along with that, the same thing, there's this card for some reason just alone, but it says the Votes for Women at the top, and it's in that series of five Chamberlain cards. And I'll show the others in a minute or two. But this, I think some of you will recognize, is the work of Rose O'Neill. And her signature is in the lower right corner, and it has that long tail. So O'Neill, and then she would draw it down almost like tears or something coming out of her signature. But she was the creator of the Cupid doll. And you've seen that forever, especially back in 1910, say, on illustrations, book illustrations, in magazines, in advertising, Cupid dolls themselves, and there's lots of Cupid collectors, and the real thing was Rose O'Neill, and there were a lot of imitators too that would draw little Cupid like uh, little dolls, but kind of a naked little kids, and but happy and smiling and rosy cheeks. These are all five of the Emily Hall Chamberlain cards, then plus that Rose O'Neill card. That makes up the set of six for those. But those are all handsome cards, the same quality paper throughout. Great cards. Here's a few holidays just to give you a taste. Some of these would have been made by the state groups. This one was, it came out of Maryland. And we know that from something on the back, and also something that maybe Ken Flory, and I'll talk about his book here in a little bit. But Votes for Women, the Santa Claus, a little bit different, but a Christmas card that would have been sent out to kind of stir emotions, shall we say. And here's the same thing for Thanksgiving Day. And I wanted to just, they not only sold these cards at suffrage headquarters around, but there were lots of postcard shops in the old days. During this heyday, when postcards were a big deal, even Wichita had one or two postcard shops, and that's all they sold, floor to ceiling. And they had spinner racks and wall racks and stacks, and it just goes, you go crazy when you look at the interior of a drugstore with a few racks of cards, or a whole postcard shop. Those postcards are certainly sought after and admired. But this was the kind of a card that would have been sold in just a postcard shop, not necessarily a uh, a suffrage headquarters. But it certainly talks about suffragette. And this is a similar thing for a Valentine and kind of strange looking little kids, but or a little man, a little lady. But for the candidate they've selected for my Valentine. Here's one that you would could almost visualize it being die cut and being a card that would have been slipped inside an envelope and sent to your Valentine. But that would have also probably been for sale at a card shop. Similar for this. This is an Easter greeting with the chickens and the ducks and the beautiful lady and her hat box to take care of her hat. So she looks like she was kind of traveling and really a handsome card. Votes for women. Now, this is a group of cards. They're all artist signed. It's a comic artist, so usually they don't have a whole lot of status. It's not the quality that Emily Hall Chamberlain had or Rose O'Neill, but this artist was Cobb, Cobb, Shin, Shinn. And I don't know if Cobb is a man or a woman. I would just guess a man, but who knows? Or I've never heard anyone say for sure, that is a lady or whatever. But this whole thing of this women, I mean, it's kind of a slang if you look at more of them, and we will here. But I have this group. Here's another Cobb Shin. And when you see several of them together, then, the next time you go through cards, one of these will fall out and you'll know immediately that's a Cobb Shin card. It's a suffrage card. Now, he did lots of cards that were not suffrage. So you have to read them and sort through and see which ones are and which are not suffrage. Here are the 10 that I have, and I'm sure there must be more. I don't know. There's something to look for, and see, all of these, I think, for the most part, were bought one card at a time and then upgraded. I've tried to, sometimes I'm not real thrilled to put a card in here that has been creased, or I don't have any with stamps torn off or anything that drastic. I do try to upgrade, and that's part of collecting. You do that if it's a campaign button or a poster or whatever. This is a series that was done by Walter Wellman, and we're lucky because Dennis McBurney is here today, and that's one of his specialties is collecting Walter Wellman postcards. And so he'll know a lot about this. This is just one little series that he did. It's great, great fun to see it. There's, I think I have 9 of the 12 that I know about. They're numbered in the lower right corner, I think, and that's why I think I must have number 12. That's why I made a note of it. But I have 9 of them, and they're made on or printed on kind of a soft paper, so the edges tend to be kind of nudged or rounded, and they're not as crisp as, say, the Emily Hall Chamberlain or the Rose O'Neill cards. Here's another one of those, the suffragette series, and did a lot with hair and everything. He had the wildest signature down in the lower left, right behind the lady's feet. You'll see there, that's his signature with lots of wiggles. I'd hate to read a whole letter. I think his name alone is enough to recognize, but must have been a fun guy to have met and known, had coffee with. Here are the ones that I have. Looks like I have 8, 9 cards, and that is one I think I must have number 12 too. I imagine that Dennis has them all, but you can see it. They kind of form a series with the coloring that was used, kind of this off green and purple. I think a number of Wellman cards had a similar coloring. Maybe their printer got a deal on that those two colors of ink. I don't know. Nice cards. Now here's a series that when I first got started collecting as a teenager, I would run into one or two of these and I would pick them up and there was nothing as far as an article, a book, anything available back in the 1960s and 1970s. They're just, I didn't know how many there were. I didn't know what they looked like. I don't know if you're like me, but once I see something, sometimes it will click when I see it again, and I'll say, "Oh, I need that," or that that's something that so and so had in their collection, and I'd like to get one too. Well, this is a series of cards. It turns out to be 12 cards, and it's we don't know the artist, but we do know the publisher, and it was Dunstan and Weiler, two words. They came out in 1909, and there are 12 of these, and we're going to look at them. But this shows what could happen. A suffragette Madonna, and here he has a plate behind his head, which gives him almost an ecclesiastical look. But here he is feeding the baby in a baby bottle, which looks kind of strange to us, but I think that's the way they looked back then in 1909. These first 12 that we're looking at they're similar. They all have a gold border. And so keep that in mind. A gold border for the Dunstan Weilers. And here are all 12. You can see them. I love the Uncle Sam lady down the lower, third one over on the lower shelf, so to speak, the row. The men are washing clothes, and the woman's all dressed up and doing fancy things. And here's this one at the top row where she's a policeman. You could just see all these new things that were might happen. Here's a man down here on the bottom row holding two kids, and his wife is gone, must be out doing important work, I'm sure. But this is the gold border set of Dunstan Weiler. Then, that same year in 1909, we came out with the same Dunstan Weiler, published it again, but with a white border, no gold. Maybe they ran out of gold ink. I'm not sure. I don't think so. But they even reworked some of the backgrounds in some of the set. So you'll notice something similar, but the background may be different. So here we have 24 cards all together. The Dunstan Weiler is not horrible as far as paper, but it has soft edges too. So it you're always, or I have been anyway, upgrading, trying to find a better one. And here are all 12 of the Dunstan Weiler white border cards. They're from 1909. Came out the same year for some reason. It'd be so neat to find a trade magazine of a postcard publisher might have put out, or talking about them, or why they had to do certain things, or who the artist was. And, maybe something like that exists. I don't know, but I've never seen or heard tell of it. Now, here's a series of cards that they appear to be, I don't see any artist signature on any of them, but all the kids are cute. They all have round faces and expressions, and they are published by the Barton Spooner Publishers. And I have 12 of these, and I bet there are probably 16 or more. I don't know. But it'd be fun to check with another postcard collector that has a suffrage collection and see what they have, compare. Here's Votes for Women again, but cute, cute kids. And here's another. Boy, she got in trouble, broke the store man's window. That'd be bad. And here's the set of 12 that I have. And again, I'm sure or I imagine there are more. I wouldn't be that lucky to just have found them all. But it's great fun finding stuff one by one and upgrading and going home and finding, oh well, I've already got it. But you can always be upgrading, so that's good to do. Here's an artist that I only know of two of these cards by Ryan, Ryan. The signature's in the upper left corner, and it's another one of these artistic signatures that the downstroke on the word on the letter R goes down a ways, but it's in the upper left corner where he signed it, and it's Ryan. So many of these would have been in a postcard shop, now not necessarily in a state headquarters or national headquarters gift shop. This is the other Ryan that I have, and its signature's in the upper left. The man's hiding behind the looks like the stove, and his wife is kind of in charge, the head of the house. Now, this is the novelty card. You can see it has a crease or two, certainly one that I'd like to upgrade sometime, but it's showing the pants. And so if you give the women right to vote, then they're going to be wearing the pants. So keep that in mind, everybody. Not all suffrage cards are pro suffrage. There are some that are anti. I even noticed in Ken Flory's book, he has a picture of a headquarters of an anti suffrage group. So, here we are in America, and we all don't think the same way and have strong feelings both ways. And so they did back then on the suffrage idea of suffrage for women as well. This is the same kind of card, only it's a novelty card and has the pants. It has two clothing buttons and fabric pants. I think felt probably. It looks like ribbon for suspenders. But oh, you suffragette. So that's kind of fun, but a novelty card. And here are chickens, and they all have human faces. You see the chicks and the daddy chicken and the mama chicken and placards on the wall and so forth. Go lay an egg is a little back talk there from the man, I think. Next, the daddy chicken. And this one's kind of grubby. I'm sorry about it, and I haven't found a better one that's available. But it's a neat because it's a birth announcement when somebody had a baby. And this one appears to have been used. If you look in the stamp box, it's dated February 11th, 1916. And they had a little baby and then made that announcement to the world. And so that was fun. And you don't see too many birth announcement postcards, but this is one. And here's the suffragette. Cats are always fun to look for, and looks like this one's been in a cat fight for sure. And here are a lot of spiffy ladies, and they're at the uh, let's see, it's the get my glass out here. It's the suffragettes at the New York State Fair in Syracuse, New York. And look at the not bandanas, but the sashes they're wearing across themselves, and those wonderful umbrellas. Wouldn't you love to find some of those? And the banners on the tent and everything. And it says Victory, New York, 1915. They're on the roof, kind of. So they had passed finally, their voting that they did, and they were the winners. And so all of this great stuff. Suffrage collectors have to really hunt to find stuff, but there are some great, great pieces to be had. Not only postcards, but the pinback buttons and fabric and toys, and it just goes on. But it's what we love to collect. Now, talk about a big parade and talk about having a crowd already there. In 1913, in March, when Woodrow Wilson was inaugurated, the ladies, I think, kind of got together and knew that there would be a good crowd, so they decided to have a parade for votes for women in Washington, D.C. earlier that same morning. And so this shows one of their floats and ladies marching and a big audience. So this would have been a big, big deal in the newspapers, and that's the way they had of communicating back then. Certainly wasn't much in the way of radio or television or anything except for newspapers. That was the way. But there are a lot of cards in this series, and they're real photos. There were sets of cards published in little booklets, and this is the only one that I picked up along the way, and I liked it. And I just the inaugural presidential cards have never excited me. And this is kind of the same way that I felt about this. But I think it's good to have a sampling and to see just what kind of a crowd they did have in DC in 1913. This is a card that I found early on and didn't realize I'd never seen anything like it. And I did see the votes for women, and then the owl is saying, "Ooh, suffragette." But here are, I guess, chickens and maybe ducks too. Maybe they're all chickens, but they're chickens and they're dressed up as people. And that's a big topic to collect for collectors. And with this green background, I have since seen others in this chicken series, but I've never seen anything else that was a suffrage card. So I think there was just this one card in the little series, and I don't know if we're talking about 4 cards or 6 cards, but the ones I've seen were other ones were green backgrounds. So done by the same artist with wonderful artwork and paper, and I that may even be embossed. I kind of think it might be. And here's another artist that is a favorite of postcard collectors, and that's Ellen Clapsaddle. And she did this. She did a couple of cards that were Valentine cards like this. And you see here that she's looking to your left, or her, that'd be her right, but she's looking left. She did the same card, only looking right. And this time the sash that she's showing you, it goes down, where the other side it was going up. Both of them are Valentines, and both of them nice. I probably embossed, but nice artwork. And she did hundreds, maybe thousands of postcards, and did at least a couple of these suffrage cards. Then this is one she did that's kind of the other way around. You know, a lady's sphere is in the home and not so much out carrying on and in parades and things like that. So maybe she was looking for both the pro and the anti elements when she was offering her cards in a postcard shop. Now here's a card that it's a series of cards. They were published by the Cargill of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the neat thing about this artwork in the upper left corner here, that's what it says. The ballot is denied to women. It's a blot on the esthetician. And so that's a blot on this shield or this coat of arms or something, for different families and so forth. But it's a blot the way it is. And so the ballot is being denied to the women. There are 30 different cards in this set. And there's one of the 30 that is rare. And this is it. They're all numbered on the back, but all of these cards have, or most of them, or quite a few of them, have these sayings. And this is one that speaks right out to special sex legislation. And maybe that was not seen as being cricket. I don't know who the decider was. This was a national card, so it probably was shipped out of the national headquarters. I'm not sure, maybe from Cargill and Grand Rapids, Michigan, too. I'm not sure. But there has to be a reason why this card is so hard to find. And the only thing I can think of maybe is the blatant use of the word sex and sex legislation and kind of drawing attention. So maybe they thought they would get along just as well with the other 29 cards. But this is the one that you want to watch for. It's kind of short and sweet. And remember, it's 111. Next, I'll show the back of the card. Here it is. It's numbered in the upper left corner, and you can see published by the Cargill Company, Grand Rapids, Michigan, on a profit sharing basis whereby every dollar's worth sold means money in the national treasury. So that was a moneymaker card. It was a fundraiser. So a great card. Now, this is the first 11 of these cards. And number 11, I don't know that we have them in order, but this one uh, on the middle row, the lower one, that is the number 111 that's so hard. So that's the first 11. That's the next 11. So that makes 22 cards. And then we have several flag cards showing, look at the flag. It only has four stars in it, and that indicates the four states at that time who had passed the legislation. And it seems that Wyoming was the first state to do so. And I think that was like in 1890. Yeah, it says 1890, first states. And there's also a Lincoln card in it. And this is the only one, no, there's two that are vertical, but there are lots, or there used to be. Collecting taste and things have changed over the years. When I started collecting, there was a big to do about Lincoln postcards. And there would be checklists, or there would be somebody talking about their Lincoln album. They also used to collect covered bridges and lighthouses. There's a whole group of topics that used to be more popular than they are today. And a lot of times you'll see a whole album of lighthouses, and that's probably from somebody's collection 30, 40 years ago. But Lincoln cards, if you were going through a box of them, it wouldn't take you long to see if there's any with this blot in the upper left corner, and that would be one of the Cargill cards. So you could find that maybe filed under Lincoln instead of Suffrage. That's just a tip. And this is the other vertical card showing that blot again. Then you can see there's 5 of these cards with the flag with 4 stars, and then this wonderful banner here, equal suffrage, birthright of woman. So you had 22, you had 11, and 11 is 22 cards, and then you have these 8, and that makes your whole 30 set. So there we go. And out of all the cards, the number 111 would be the rarest. And then I think these flags are probably more popular and the Lincoln more popular. I think these 8 might be more popular than some of the other sayings. But, maybe you could find one of the sayings that means something more to you or to a friend or something. And so the set is really fun to try to collect and to put together, and it may take time. I frankly, in order to get that 111, I had to buy a whole set. And I can remember that we were married, so that would have been probably in 1972, 3 or 4, somewhere in there, that I was able to buy the whole set and get my 111, and I was able to upgrade quite a few of the cards. So it was a good purchase, and I've never regretted it, and I've never had another chance for number 111. Just saying. Here's the card itself. I mean, the other vertical card, just looking at it and seeing it close up, almost in real time there. Now, here's a card. We're almost finished, by the way, so, or this portion, because we have some other things we want to talk about too. But here's a card that is a novelty card. It's what we call a metamorphic mechanical card. It works kind of like Venetian blinds do. And so over here on the left side, you see the lady in her dress and the man in the suit. And it says, if the suffragettes succeed, ooh. And so you pull this tab at the lower edge, and then the Venetian blind shutter, and then you can see this woman is devoid of her skirt, and now she is in pantaloons. And look at the man. He's wearing the apron, and he's in charge of the baby, and he's lost his derby hat too. Well, this is a great card, and it was fun to be able to share it with my friend Ken Flory when he was doing his book. I sent him several cards to photograph, and this one I had not worked it. I hadn't pulled the tab for years myself, but I didn't want to. So I sent it to him, and he pulled the tab and he took the pictures or scanned it, both of them, before and after. And so then he pushed it back and returned it to me in the mail, and it all worked, and I didn't lose anything. It was happily ever after. There was a risk involved, but I wanted him to include it in the book and he was all excited about it. So it has a full page in his book, and it's fun to have a card like that, along with several others that he's attributed to being from my collection. But uh, that's what collecting is about: is the sharing and enjoying what you're looking at and being able to talk about it. This is a card that is a real favorite also. Uh, I maybe have seen one since I got this one, but I bought it years ago at the Wichita Postcard Club show. And this is just nearly makes you sick, but here's the lady, picture of her underneath the Statue of Liberty. And these are all the people that are disenfranchised. the Indian in the upper left. And in the upper right, it says the idiot. Can you imagine? And then in the lower left, the convict. He doesn't have the right to vote. And then in the lower right, the lunatic. So the woman is in company with all of these disenfranchised people. And here it is on this amazing poster type postcard. That would be a natural to be a poster as well. And you just never know what's going to show up. But that's pretty exciting. I hope you like it. This is what Kenneth Florey's book looks like. It's paper bound, several hundred pages, American Women's Suffrage Postcards, a study and catalog. It's excellent, and you should have it if that's of interest to you. But it's all of this information that he has put together in his lifetime and studying other collections and everything like he's done. So I was pleased to have had a part in this. And he even came one year to our show some years ago and gave our Sunday morning presentation. We always have a speaker every year, and he gave a presentation on suffrage cards and had a case or two of books, I think, that he was quite amazed. I think he sold them all. So I was pleased for him, for sure. And so we want to show you something about this business of Airtable and forming a database. And right here below it says suffrage cards, and then there's this link. Now that's in the uh, chat room also. But if you go and save this link and then open it, click on it, open it later, you'll be able to see this Airtable database that we have, and you'll be able to look at all of my collection again if that interests you, or things uh, that I didn't show. You can look at those too and see all the cards that I've used in this presentation. Recently, I purchased this new scanner and wanted to show you how easy it is and how great it works. What I was recommended by Daniel May to buy is this Epson scanner ES-500W2. And I've loaded it here with 14, 15 postcards. And I want to show you how fast it does the scanning. And the kicker is that it scans both sides at the same time. So 1, 2, 3, and here we go. Isn't that cool? All of that scanning. I think of opening the window and laying the card down and Anyway, this is a card that has been scanned with that scanner, and you see that we're able to show and utilize a setting that gives a border around all four edges of the card. And you know how important it is to know what the card looks like condition wise, front and back. So this is a great scanner and it's affordable. And if you're going to be talking about postcards or selling them or something, or offering them, on eBay, and so you might want to think about this scanner. Now we want to show about the Airtable database. And here we go.
Okay, I'm going to take over here for a little bit. So,
Happily.
so this is the database as it appears on your computer when you're putting stuff in. So for Hal wanted to scan have all his cards in there for that he has for suffrage cards. So we scanned them all on the scanner, and then we put them in the database. So The database, when you open it up, it looks like it could be an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so you got these columns, if you will, and you name the columns. So the first one is a number, just the number of the cards. So like we just numbered them one, two, three. The second thing was the front picture. The third one's the back picture. And the next one was we had one card that had the one that he showed that metamorphosized had another front picture. So we made a deal for that. And then we made one for the group. Okay. So all these first ones were in the swell group, and the database allows you to pre-populate, if you will, the names. So when you put the cards in there, you can select it and they all say the same name. This is the view that we're sharing with you. If you click on the database, on the link that we shared in there, you should be able to come up with a view that looks something like this. So basically, and then I'm gonna give a live demonstration here in a little bit. But you have over here, you got the main view. The main view is the sort of the Excel one. This is the gallery view, and then this next view we're gonna show here just a second. So, oh, okay. Anyway, this one here says group. And basically, it lets you make a command kind of thing, which basically sorts them by the category we had. You can sort them by other things too. But so we have 5 swell cards, 16 state cards, 6 national cards. And if you were able to scroll over, you'd be able to see the rest of the cards. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the cost of this. Okay, so basically, you can get a free subscription to the Airtable to put your cards into. And the free subscription includes unlimited bases. So the suffrage card thing that we put in there is a base. So most people have categories of cards they have. So you might have a suffrage category, you might have one on dogs, you might have one on cats. Each one of those can be a base. So you can have unlimited bases. You can have up to 1,000 records per base. So that's each card could be a record. Okay. There's a deal about editors, and I'm not going to get into that. But you can have up to 1 GB of attachments per base. Okay. Now, on our base, we chose to scan the cards at 300 DPI, and we put in both the front and the back of the cards. So we have 305 cards in there at that DPI. Okay. So that actually ended up being 614.7 megabytes of the 1 GB that we were able to have. Now, if you'd use a lesser DPI, you could get more in. If you didn't put front and back, you can get more in. But anyway, that sort of gives you an idea of what we're talking about. So, but we had 152 records of that. Now, just remember, you can have as many bases as you want. So you could split categories up into more than one base if you needed the room or whatever. This is also something that you can take with you. So it can be on your phone and it can be on your iPad. With the iPad, you obviously need to have internet connected to anyway to get into it. But basically, it's cloud based. It's not doesn't take up a lot of storage on your phone or whatever. With your phone, you know as long as you're connected to a cell tower, you can get into it. So you can go through the databases and see if you already have a card or whatever there. So this is showing uh, the main view where we entered the cards, the sort of the Excel view. The next one shows the gallery view, which we shared with you guys. And so you see, you scroll through all the cards. If you see a card that you want to see more about, you can click on it. Okay, and then you click on it again, and you can see how nice and big it gets. And you can do the same with the back of the card. The group of cards here again sorts them by category that we put in there. And you can put as many fields in the database as you want. If you want to, you can put enough fields in there so it takes you 2 or 3 days to put all the input about a single card. I don't recommend that, however. That's Airtable, and I think that concludes our presentation.
You know, one thing that we use this Airtable on, not only for my uh, suffrage cards. But with our friend Clarissa Ferraris, we were able to put all of her COVID cards, postcards that she collected. And she had like 2,000, over 2,000 of those just from the COVID postcards that she had put together. And so she wanted to have it in a base that others could look at. And you can go to, anybody can go and open it up and see what she has or doesn't have, or
And
uh,
we had to pay extra for that because she exceeded the 1,000 cards. Uh, but it allows you to embed the link into a website or something so people can just go on it. So her website is live and you can go look at her cards at any time on her website. So
well, thank you very much. I'm going to ask Bill Burton to unmute himself and see if there's any comments or questions.
It's very interesting. Thanks, Hal. I guess the first one we want to bring up is a question from Dolores Rowe. Uh, what did you include? Why did you include the O'Neill card with the set of Henderson cards?
With the chamber, well, I just did because they were part of that. If you look, get them all together, they all had that top of the card, votes for women. And it was made up a series. That's why I put it in, because they are part of that little series that probably were for sale there in New York at their headquarters. They were official cards.
Tom Peeling makes a note about the Cobb Shin question. And I also collect Cobb Shin cards, although I can't afford to buy all of them because there are so many. But he points out that Cobb Shin was born in 1887 and died in 1951. He was a well-known illustrator and was a man. Conrad X. Shin. There was also Tom Pauling. Do you know what Shin's other name was? I think it was Tom something. Oh, maybe Tom's gone. But anyway, Shin operated under two names, and he was a very prolific guy. Did a lot of advertising for the Ford Company.
Oh,
I am not a postcard collector. I just Googled while you were talking about him, Hal.
Yeah.
okay.
Shin used in his Ford cards. He made fun of Ford, and I don't think you could get paid by Ford to make fun of them anymore. So we'll go on from there. Dennis McVerney writes, there are 16 Walter Wellman suffragette series numbered 4,000 to 4015. They're shown in Ken Flory's book. You want to elaborate on that, Dennis?
No, really, since Hal's aware of the book, he can look it up, but there are 16 total in that.
Okay. Alan Martin points out that the purple and green is the suffragist color for women.
Right.
That's why that was there.
Good.
They were also considered suffragette colors as well as yellow.
Yeah.
Is that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Did I get that right, Dennis?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, and that came straight out of Flory's book, because
Okay.
all I had seen is the Wellman purple and green, and I didn't know why. And then I read his book and go, oh, that was because like Hal's early cards, all I had seen was mostly the yellow other than that.
Okay. Dennis asked the question, Hal, do you know why the Dunstan Weller series shows up on eBay with and without the gold borders? Is
And
it maybe because of the reprints?
No, I asked that question before he showed the second series.
Oh.
And I suspect it was just for cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Roseanne says, and I think she's got a point, I can't believe how sexist some of these cards are.
Just seemed like there was in the middle of Hal's presentation, just every card, if you think about it, would be demeaning and sexist. and did not promote the idea of suffrage, women getting the vote, but of, why they shouldn't, because they were going to become butch.
Well, Hal, do you want to explain why you sectioned it off that way, or is that just the way it happened?
Nothing was intended by me. It's just the way they came up.
There is an enormous amount of anti-suffragist postcards around. I'm not even altogether sure that there weren't more anti-suffrage than pro-suffrage cards,
Might
at
have
least from
been.
what I've seen.
Yeah.
Philip Biedenbeck says, Born One Suffragette is for sale on eBay right now for $40. Rush right out.
There you go.
Jeff Danieleko says it's interesting. It's interesting that most of these cards are illustrations and very few photos. I think you picked that up with the Woodrow Wilson inauguration.
Right.
But again, is there a balance there? Do you have any sense that there were more photos or less photos than illustrations?
In Ken Flory's book, he shows quite a few real photos, but you and I both know if we've collected real photos and collected postcards, you have to be at the right place at the right time, or that one real photo goes into a collection and then is not available again until that collection is dispersed. And, I just never had a chance to go to a postcard show and see I've done it, for some things, but not for suffrage. And so that was probably me being in Kansas. And yes, we have a show, and that's brought a lot of cards. But before the show came along, we just didn't have those kinds of postcards, and it's just the way it was.
Regarding Airtable, um, everyone's app platform. Did I understand the advertisement that Alan showed? Was that a monthly subscription that you had to buy?
Yes, I
Oh,
think
wait, whoa,
so.
whoa, 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 whoa. You can get it for free.
But
So
you
you
had
can,
to have the machine.
You have to have a
the
computer.
machine is a scanner. It's completely different.
But you needed that particular scanner.
No.
No, well, no, you don't need that. That scanner is a scanner, period. It scans postcards, both sides. Has
Okay, I
nothing
use
to
a
do with
flatbed scanner
Airtable.
for my scanner. That's obviously not what they have in mind.
Yeah, it's just you can get that scanner or any scanner you want to use. You just need to have JPEG images or something that you can put into the Airtable thing. So they're not connected, except for the fact that when we scanned all his suffrage cards, it made it so easy, and we could put those borders on it, which was fantastic.
Okay. Ashley Aaron says, I had that scanner and I love it. My use is mostly for making scans for the cards I'm selling on eBay, but someday, I should scan my personal collection. Have you gotten there yet, Ashley? Dennis, you
Sorry,
said
I am here.
oh, there you are. Good.
I have not gotten to scan my own collection yet.
Someday. Dennis says he used the Epson ES 580W for most of the Rick Gary cards. So we'll go on from there. What is the model? Okay, what's the model number for the Epson scanner again? I think we already answered that. ES 580W, is that right?
No, that's the one that I use. It's very
Uh-huh.
similar, but I think Hal and Alan used a slightly different model.
Ours is ES-500W, and then there's like two, which is two eyes or whatever, wireless color duplex anyway. But there's three different ones that you can get, and they have escalating prices between them. The first one you hardwire, the second two you can have wirelessly connected, and one of them has a a control panel on it and the other one doesn't. Whatever will fit your budget, and if you can hardwire it in, you can get the cheapest one. So
Andrew Cunningham says, I have the Epson FF680W, which looks the same as Hal's or is very similar, and it's excellent. That's a commercial, right? Right, Andrew?
Good.
Yeah, it's really great. At
Um,
first, I thought, well, I'll never put my really expensive cards through there because God knows, they're going to get bent or twisted. But now everything goes in there. I haven't had any accidents or anything go wrong. Even you can even put in, like, if you have the cards that are 4 or 5 cards wide, you can even stick those in like right from the top and feed it right through, and it'll do the whole thing.
Like for a panorama?
Yeah, like for a
Wow.
yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't known you could do that. I always thought, well, I've always pieced together my 3-card sets, and it's brutal to do. Is there George Everhart says, is there a field for notes on the Airtable?
I'm not sure about the searchable, but you can have as many fields in there as you want. Like I was saying, we had a field in ours for notes. We didn't put any notes in it. There are ways to search it, but I'm not exactly perfectly clear about how all that works. So
Now the compliments are rolling in, Hal.
Oh,
Great
yeah.
job, Hal. Wonderful presentation, Hal. What a fantastic collection of cards, Hal. Don't blush. Let's see. Alan Mann, excellent presentation, Hal. Right back to the compliments. Great presentation, says Jerry. It was noticeable that the card that depicted those disenfranchised did not include African Americans.
Yeah.
They skipped somebody? How could
That's
they do that?
interesting. Yeah.
Although technically African Americans were eligible to franchise even if they were sort of kept away. So maybe that was the point. You and Martha say thanks for a terrific presentation and thanks for the information on Airtable. So informative. George Everhart says if they were naturalized or born in the U.S., they could vote per the 14th Amendment unless discouraged or prevented from local elections. Has anyone written about the history of the postcard shops and how they got their cards? For instance, Kurt Tyke work orders indicate those who indicate those who bought and have and how many how many they would sell. I didn't realize Kurt Tyke kept that kind of information. Is that true, David?
Yeah, let me say, because what you said was what I wrote. Kurt Tyke work orders indicate who bought the cards, who ordered them, and how many cards they ordered. How would a shop acquire any cards? Because they wouldn't print up an extra 1,000 to sell to postcards because the original buyer might not like that. I mean, I don't know how they acquired cards. That was for Kurt Tyke alone. But I'm wondering how, because I've always wondered, how did postcard shops get their cards? From whom did they, was there a clearinghouse that stocked millions of cards and they would ship them out to postcard shops per orders, or how would they advertise them? I mean, it's always been a mystery, the whole idea of the postcard shop, and I wonder who's investigated this and could inform me about that.
Al, can I answer from the political button perspective, which is what I collect?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Here's an example with Bastion Brothers and Whitehead and Hogue button dealers. They would have salesmen who would go around to the different headquarters or whatever, and they would bring samples of their buttons, or they'd bring a catalog that had samples in it to sell to the company or the whatever. And I once bought some buttons out of New Jersey, and they were example of a certain William Howard Taft button, and they were on a little cardstock card, and it had a little blank on the bottom for number ordered. And to give you some idea from the button perspective, there was some that we consider, one that we consider somewhat rare, and they had ordered 10,000 of those for the state of New Jersey. But Hal will understand this, and Gary Faber will. There's a little 7/8 inch black and white Taft picture button that you still buy for $10 wherever you find it, or less. And the state of New Jersey, this one headquarters had ordered 100,000 of those for the state. So, that I think I'm guessing, but that may have been what happened with postcards too. They would either have a catalog that a salesman would bring around, or he'd bring samples, and they would do that sometimes with buttons. They'd leave the wording off, and like a Santa button would, for Christmas, you'd put your department store name on the top of it, or they would make it that way. So I suspect maybe postcards were done that way. It's pure conjecture, but anyway.
Well, I
Does
personally
anybody know?
collect those travelers will call cards and that sort of thing. They are tremendous. Kurt Tyke had a real fleet of salesmen, and so did Auburn postcard manufacturers. So I think they were all over, and I think that's the general way that they did it.
No, but Kurt Tyke would have the salesmen go out for sure, and they would go to a restaurant, and this is the kind of card we make. And then the restaurant says, yeah, I'd like 5,000. That's great. And you'd see the work order. You can go to the library, I forget the name, in Chicago right now,
Newberry.
the Newberry, and look at that work order. So they ordered 5,000. How would a postcard shop, once the Kurt Tyke supplied the card to the person who ordered them, how would wider distribution occur? Because if I ordered 5,000 cards, I wouldn't want the Kurt Tyke to print up another 5,000 or 10,000 and sell them and make their money off it. And it's my card. I mean, how were cards acquired by postcard shops, and in what volume? I mean, you see those racks and racks and racks and spinner racks and so on and so forth. And you say, God, that's a load of cards. Where did they order them?
Yeah.
Well, from salesmen, right? So they would go around, and just with catalogs, I've seen a catalog from before World War One period.
But the
And I have
salesmen are,
I have a Dexter catalog, a salesman catalog from the 50s myself. So they would do that. But most of the cards, you have to remember, those guys were selling were comic cards, art cards that were produced in huge volumes. So they weren't being reproduced initially for one buyer. They were just produced. All those comic cards were being produced by,
no,
by
that makes
hundreds of
perfect
thousands.
sense. That makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
But there was the whole raft of other cards that were available.
Yeah.
Although you may be right. I don't know that largely comic and holiday cards and such were the bulk of what was available. But how would a postcard shop get, crazy things like real photo postcards or political or the Cargill cards? I mean, the Cargill cards would have presumably been distributed by. I mean, I don't know. I think it's an interesting topic, and what you're saying makes sense, but is not inclusive is what I'm looking for.
No, I've tried to take a look at when you see those pictures of the shops, like the spinner racks and the racks, like try to see like what are those cards, and a lot of it is cartoonish cards and that kind of thing that haven't really filtered down as much to us as the view cards have. But I guess at the time those were really dominant.
Plus
That's really popular.
the printer's name was on the back of the card too. So someone could just call up the U.S. Postcard Company in Chicago, say, ring the operator and say, I want 500 of these cards.
But if somebody else had bought the cards, wouldn't they have the rights to whether or not the company could sell them and then make their own money off of it?
Well, those would be specialist ones, but if the company is on the back of the card, you call up the company and you order the card. And they're willing to sell it. Now, as far as the real photos, if you have a shop in Wichita, Kansas, you're going to go to the local photography studio and probably have real photo cards made up of your store or whatever.
That makes sense.
Okay, Ashley Ahrens says as a point of resource, if you need help setting up any model of the Epson scanner to have edges of the postcard show as Hal's do. I recommend paying $1 or $2, but you don't have to pay that anything. If you get to our friend Mark from SM Postcards Ko-Fi site. Ashley, you want to elaborate on that, please?
We have a copy of that document, and if anybody wants that document, we could send it to them.
Okay.
Yeah, I also use that to set up my scanner. That's how I found out about the 1/8" borders too.
Okay. George Eberhardt points out that after 1868, black males were given the right to vote in the U.S., but that in the 1870s, some former Confederate soldiers passed Jim Crow laws, and I think that's something that I think most of us know. What about the generation Asian citizens? Were they also disfranchised?
Probably.
George Everhart answers the question. In 1882, Chinese immigrants lost the right to vote and the right to become citizens through the Chinese Exclusion Act. Also, the Magnuson Act, and the Magnuson Act overturned this in 1943. All right, Alan Mann, I regularly attended the San Diego Chinese Museum events, and they raise this at many of the historic sessions, so that fits in. Let's see, George Everhart says the McCarran-Walter Act of 1952 expanded this further in Americans with Asian ancestry. I'm not sure it was that point. Excellent presentation, Hal. We're at it again. Were there any interesting narratives on the back of the postcards that linked to the suffrage movement? That's a good point. Good question.
You know, on the back of that metamorphic card, the yellow one, I think it just says, "What do you think of this?" or something like that. I think it was sent probably by an uncle or brother or something like that to somebody in Oklahoma. But I don't think anything pithy. There may be some on those, a couple of those state cards, but nothing to write home about, I don't think.
Jerry Denny Linko says that according to the Epson website, only the 680W is currently being manufactured.
We bought ours on Amazon, and they had all 3 models shown.
Okay, well,
Yeah, they might have had some older ones, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
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 okay. Well, that's it. Short set of comments there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If you keep
Thank
in mind,
you.
those scanners are not just for postcards. You can use them to scan regular paper documents too.
Photographs, yeah.
Yeah, these are not photo scanners. These are document scanners that work well on postcards. But if you want to do photos on these, they'll stick together too much. But the postcards, for the vast majority of them, as long as you're not using any ones with glitter or applique, these work. The postcards work very well on these scanners.
Yeah, it was a pretty controversial moment in history, right? With the suffrage for and against, and
I think so.
only two cards that you showed were by the Barker brothers, and Cargill would have been corporate imprint. And I was thinking that for a corporation, it might have been a little risky to put yourself on one side of a controversial issue. And I'm wondering if anybody has looked into that. I didn't look for that when I looked at Ken's book to see how many corporate imprints there were. Has anybody thought about that you know of, or have you?
No, I haven't. Now, I would love to know more about Cargill. You know, it just says Cargill, period, Grand Rapids, Michigan.
That was a very liberal position.
Well, yeah. And 30 cards, that's like you say, it's a big chance, but I just don't know. I really don't.
Harold, were the cards more popular in those states where they were actually, let's say, I know American politics as well as I do, popular in what we would call the democratic states than the kind of redneck states, because you could clearly see on that map the kind of what we would call the southern states were, let's say, less willing to consider women suffrage. So,
Right.
were these cards predominantly sold in, those states where women's suffrage was likely to be popular or willing to go through legislative. Did they sell any in like Virginia and South Carolina and Georgia and places like that? Or if they did, would they have been, let's say, persecuted?
Ugh, I just truly don't know. I
Now,
would think that they would have been all over what?
I would keep in mind, knowing U.S. politics the way I do, the Democrat states in that era were the southern states, and the Republican states
Oh,
were
yeah,
the
yeah.
northern states.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did
So,
remember that, yeah,
and the last state to finally push it over the top and make it the whichever amendment I forget now it is was Tennessee, a southern state. So it wasn't necessarily tied to a state, I don't believe, with suffrage.
And the
Yeah.
state that was aced out by Tennessee was Delaware, which was planning on being the 36th state, but Tennessee beat them by several days.
Oh,
Right.
there you
So
go.
Delaware is nothing if not a quasi-southern state.
Yeah.
And when the 19th Amendment was approved, was it just all women over 21 that could vote? Apart from those that were disenfranchised that came maybe a bit later, because in the United Kingdom it was slightly different. We gave women suffrage in 1918, but they had to be over 30 years of age, and it didn't happen until 1928 that they got equal suffrage with men over 21.
Interesting.
It's just interesting to know if it was just
I don't
21
believe
or
that the text of the 19th Amendment indicated anything about age. It was just women.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Very interesting. For the most part, like I said, I bought all of the Cargill set. I had to get the 111. So that took care of that. But for the rest of the cards, one at a time, and back in the days before the internet, we had antique shows where you might find something, and then we had bars postcard news back in the 70s and 80s, and that was, I don't know if it was every other week or every week, but I did postcard auctions in there, and that was the big source because they had every lot pictured and described, just like one or two lines. But uh, that was where we went instead of eBay, and so you would look and look and look. You go through the whole issue and not find a suffrage card. Uh, but you might have found lighthouses and you might have found covered bridges and things like that. So I think just living in Kansas and not having access to the East Coast or the West Coast postcard shows, um, I don't think, I think I could have done better had I lived elsewhere or Ohio. Ohio is old and just full of antique shops, or they used to be. I think they're probably all closed by now too, but everyone's working out of home. Thank you very much. Appreciate your interest in everything.
Great job, Hal.
Okay, we'll see you next month.